always said in the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people. I'm not the pig. You got to make a distinction. And the people are going to have to attack the pigs. The people are going to have to stand up against the pigs. That's what the Panthers are doing. That's what the Panthers are doing all over the world.
Hello, family. This is African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Attorney Cherie. So the subject of this video today is Black people, you need to pick a side. And what I mean by that is that we have a lot of Black people who are confused about racism, white supremacy, and whether or not we benefit from white supremacy, and whether or not participation inside of a white supremacist capitalist system that was built on the exploitation of Black people could be of a benefit to our community. Now, I want to say this in regard to the actor Daniel Kaluuya. And I'm sure all of you have heard of him before, but if the name doesn't ring a bell, Daniel Kaluuya was in movies like Get Out. He is also in Black Panther. Recently, he was in Queen and Slim. All very racially charged movies. And he has also been said to be cast as Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party. So it's going to be a very interesting thing seeing what happens with that, because he just said some comments that has a lot of Black people kind of up in arms, because it kind of shows that he's not someone who necessarily understands racism and understands the implications of racism and understands the reality of being Black, not just in America, but inside of a world that is dominated by European powers. So I wanted to go through this article because I felt like what he's saying, although a lot of people won't admit it, this is what a lot of people who are of African descent think. A lot of them think that they have a stake in this system. A lot of them think that their the ultimate goal is to basically be like everyone else. Basically just go to work, do your job, get money, have a nice house, have a nice, beautiful wife, whatever, and not challenge the system that is actually doing things such as police brutality, such as educational neglect in our communities. There's so many things that come from this system. We have to understand that this system has to be challenged. It can't just be that we're sitting inside of white supremacist establishments, that we're sitting inside of white supremacist employment and we're not challenging the system, that we're accepting the conditions that were given to us. So I wanted to go through what he said, because what he said, a lot of people I've heard expound the same sentiment about being Black, whether it is in America or whether it is in Europe. Now, before I get started, let me say, as far as some of my people who identify as ADOS and have basically been kind of on me as to say, oh, you didn't say anything about this person who's African and things that they said, or, oh, you need to call out these Africans, blah, 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 blah. First of all, we're all African, whether or not you want to be African or whether or not you admit you're African, which is why you're in the condition that you're in. But aside from that, let's understand this is not an African or a outside of American mentality. This is a mentality that I've heard many Black actors, actresses, many Black CEOs, many Black people who drive buses, who do things that are considered menial careers, but they feel like they have a stake in the system. I've heard so many people say these same things over and over again. So that's to say, do not even try to say that he's saying these things because he's not a hashtag ADOS. Don't try to even go there, because we could go to a lot of Black people in history, not just in history, but in our present reality, who have said these same things, who have had the same sentiment. And so it's not something that is particular to outside of this country. So I have to say that, because some people really got it twisted. They want to act like sellouts just are outside of the United States, or sellouts are those who were not born out of slavery. Like we forgot about the whole slave system was actually based and maintained on the division of Black people, and a part of that dividing Black people is giving other black people privileges and making them think that they have a stake in the plantation, making them think that their stake is in the same stake as the plantation owner. That is one of the tactics that were used on us in America, and it's obviously was one used on us everywhere we are, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Europe. So again, that is to say, if you're going to come on here and say, oh, this is because he's not ADOS, you're clearly not thinking about the fact that, number one, this is a mentality that comes from colonialism. And Africans are colonized, not just in America, but every single place where we are. And number two, there's just so many examples. I mean, look, Michael B. Jordan said something very similar. Morgan Freeman, Sidney Poitier, there's so many. Think about Raven Simone. So many people who are famous have said these same exact things. So we're pointing it out in this case because I felt like him saying it and the descriptions that he gave are something that not just pertain to Hollywood, but pertain to black people in multiple fields. So with that being said, let's talk about the article. I'm reading from the Grio, and title of the article is After Daniel Kaluuya Says He Happens to Be Black, but is Tired of Talking About Race. This is written by Dawn Onley. So scrolling down, Kaluuya, who is 30 years old, went on to explain that he doesn't want to talk about his race or doesn't want his race to define him or his work. And he said, I'm not going to ignore that I'm surrounded by racial issues, but I'm not defined by it, Kaluuya said. I'm just Daniel who happens to be black. Now, pause that. You're not just surrounded by racial issues. I want to go through this article piece by piece because every single part can be talked about. The idea of, oh, we're just black, but we're surrounded by racial issues. Well, hold up. Let's just talk about the fact, how did we get where we are right now? So let's say, let's not even say people who are African American. Let's say people who are people like Daniel Kaluuya, who's African from the continent, and his family, I believe from Uganda, I could be wrong, and he immigrated to London. More than likely, you immigrated to London or England because your current country, your home country is colonized. And the reason why it's colonized is because European oppressors from outside of your country decided that they wanted the mineral resources of your African country. And in fact, the country's existence in itself is a result of colonialism, but let's just pretend that it's not. They wanted the resources of what your people have, right? So the whole fact that you had to leave your native country, your homeland, to go to Europe and beg them for a job, that whole fact is not just a black issue, that's a black reality. The fact that I am an African American in the United States, that is a reality. I did not come here on my own. I did not come here because, I want to go partake in what's going on in America. No, my ancestors were brought here because they were black, because they were going to be used to build this country. So the idea of black, oh, these are just black issues, I'm surrounded by black issues. No, my entire existence in America is a black reality. It's not a black issue. Your entire reason of having to go to England to get employment because your people are oppressed in their homeland, because the European powers are taking your resources, they are controlling your politics of your country, they put corrupt puppets inside of your country. That is not just these are not just black issues. That is your reality. You live inside of a colonized world. You don't escape that. There's not a time where you're going to have to deal with black issues and another time where you're not going to. I don't care if you don't have one friend who ever expounds racism. You are living in a colonized world, and as a result, you don't get to claim that you're exempt from having to deal with certain things or be surrounded by our reality as black people. So let's go on. All right. Kaluuya has acted in a string of wildly successful award-winning films, Get Out, Black Panther, Clean and Slim. He went on to tell Radio Times that he has no desire to serve as a race guy or some type of spokesperson for black actors. He simply wants his films and TV work to speak for him. What is there to talk about race? Kaluuya said. It's just boring to me. What's the debate? I'm more of a doer. I'm just going to do what I want to do. So let's stop right there. No, you cannot do what you want to do. You cannot just say, I'm just going to do what I want to do, because again, you're living inside of a place where your entire career is controlled by people who are of European descent. That is your entire career. That isn't your entire life. You don't get to just do what you want to do. You get to do what they allow you to do, which is very different than doing what you want to do. Free people get to do what they want to do. People who are colonized, people who are oppressed, people who are exploited, they do what they're allowed to do. Trust me, there are many people who come from, again, I believe it's Uganda. There are people who come from Uganda who would love to just do what they want to do. Maybe you get to go to certain restaurants. Maybe you get to go talk to certain business people because of your position. But they don't get to just do what they want to do, right? Because they weren't chosen to do what they want to do. They weren't chosen by the European oppressor. So the idea that, oh, I just get to do what I want to do, no, that's for people who are actually allowed and by the system. So let's go on. He says... okay, so the person challenged him on the fact that he actually has had roles that surrounded race. And what he says is, the Fades ain't about race, Psychoville ain't about race, Skins ain't about race, Chat Room ain't about race, Johnny English Reborn ain't about race. But that almost gets erased. There's a narrative that's being pushed, Kaluuya said, according to The Independent. My issue is, number one, I don't know one of those movies, and maybe in Europe those movies are popping. My European subscribers, let me know. Is this, or not European, my people who are in Europe, let me know, are these movies popping over there? Because it's not, I've never heard one of these movies in America. I know him from Get Out. I know him from Black Panther. I know him from Clean and Swim now. And we know that he's going to also be in play Fred Hampton, which is, again, very ironic because Fred Hampton was a revolutionary Black person who talked about Black liberation constantly. That was his reality. That's what he lived. That's what he breathed. That's what he was about. So okay, I don't know any of these other movies that he's referencing, but this is how he gained notoriety. So to pretend that all these other movies where your race or your ethnicity was not a central theme, to pretend that they are on equal footing with the movies like Get Out and whatnot, that's just being blind, because I would not know who you were if it weren't for Get Out. Most people, white, Black, or whatever, would not know who you were. So the idea that you're trying to pretend that these are all the same, I mean, that's kind of concerning to me. Why is it that you're so anxious to not want to be cast as an African person? There's no such thing as being cast as something that's, that's like a blank slate, and it could be anything. You're either playing a European, you're playing a Black person who is identified as Black, or you're playing a Black person who's only there to be a token. And those people might not have characteristics that are usually pertaining to Africanness or Blackness, but those people are there more so as a space filler. So let's be very clear about that. All right, so let's get through. So it says, this isn't the first time that he's spoken out about this topic. In 2018, he told The Guardian that he finds it frustrating how successful Black actors are called upon to speak for their entire race, yet white actors are never asked to do this. I'm not a spokesperson, I'm an individual. And he explained that in earlier interviews, he said, who's a spokesperson for white people? There isn't one. No one is expected to speak for all white people. I'm just living my life. I'm a Black man, and I'm proud of it, but I'm just living my life. I've heard people say this a number of times. Who's the spokesperson for white people? Why do Black people always have to have a spokesperson? Whether or not we want to admit it, every single group, every single ethnicity, they have people who are put in a position as representatives of those people. So, for example, we know, whenever there was a Revolutionary War in America, there were a number of white people who were seen as being the leaders of whitedom, basically. You have people like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, all these people who were at the Constitutional Convention. And these people basically were utilized more so in that capacity whenever there was a war, and because they seen themselves as oppressed. So they felt the need to organize around an idea, around a doctrine. As far as today, we know that the people who are the leaders of white America are the people who we both see and who we don't see. So we have the people who we see, such as people who are inside of these Fortune 500 companies, and they're making decisions. They're pushing policies that are going to, first of all, going to benefit themselves, but are going to benefit white society on a larger scale. So the idea that there's no people who speak for Europeans, or that there's no people who speak for Chinese, or there's no people who speak for the Latinos, this is actually false. We have people inside of certain positions who do leverage for their interests. The problem is that when it comes to black people, we have a lot of people who are put in that position not by the community, but by the outside oppressor who we're actually trying to rid ourselves of. So think about it. The people who speak for white America, they are bought and sold for by white America. The people who speak for China, they're 100% for Chinese interests. But the people who speak for black people, most of them that we know because they came through a white institution, or they came through the white media, or they were picked by the white media. We don't know many who actually came through black people. So I wanted to say that yes, every single race does have people who basically leverage things for them, who are the faces of certain movements. And whenever those people are oppressed, every single time that people is oppressed or at war, you do have leaders. This is something I hear a lot, but it's not true. We have leaders in multiple times. The issue is black leaders are not picked by us, and this is where I kind of agree with him, that he should not be seen as a black leader. So many celebrities are put in this place to be seen as black leaders because the white establishment wants them to be that. And while I think every single black person should be awoken to the fact that their people are oppressed and should be driven to action, do I want people who do not recognize the oppression? Do I want people who do not see the need to move into action? Do I want all those people speaking for me? Absolutely not. And so in that degree, I do agree with him, because you are not woke to what's going on, because you are not conscious of what's going on, because you're clearly not aware of your position as a man who is living in a colonized world, and you're getting benefits from your colonizer, but you don't see the purpose of those benefits to ultimately benefit your people. You see it as a way to leverage your career. Clearly, I don't need you speaking for me. And so I'm fine with that, personally. So I think that's good for the article. I want to wrap this up to say, this is not just a Hollywood mentality. This is not a celebrity mentality. I hear this everywhere. I hear black people who work at banks say certain things like this. I hear black people who are writers. I hear black people in all types of fields basically give the impression that they don't want to be tasked with helping their people. To them, their ultimate purpose is to make money and live a happy life. And then once you're done doing that, you retire. And, maybe along the way, you might give shout outs to black people. I mean, you think about people like Jay-Z, who certainly, has done things for black people. He's definitely done a lot of charitable things for black people. But has he done anything revolutionary for our struggle that could reverse the chain of exploitation between white society and black society? No, he hasn't, because obviously that would cut into his check. He's a capitalist. He's a black capitalist. He said this many times. So to expect him to do something that's going to take money out of his pocket when he has shown no willingness to do so, that's a very unreasonable expectation. So in conclusion, I'm just saying, pick a side. If you want to be someone who's going to receive benefits from this system, if you want to be someone who's going to be put into strategic positions and not have to deal with the fact that you are black, although you will be dealing with it, whether indirectly or directly. But if you want to live if you want to live basically under the illusion that you're not affected as a black person, that you're not living as a black person, if you want to do that, then be very clear, you're not with us. You're not on our side when it comes to black liberation. And don't think that you can dip and dabble. It's very concerning to me that it's interesting, for him to feel this way. Is, when I heard the story about him starring in Queen and Slim, he kind of went out of his way to get that role. He asked for it. He wasn't even expected to, with the woman who, I forget her name, who created the movie. She was just talking to him about the movie, or just let him read the script. And he's like, oh, please let me play this guy. This wasn't something that, people are going out saying, please play this black person. I don't know the story about him getting and get out, but, Fred Hampton, I don't know the story about that either, but I'll say there's a lot of black people who are from America, who are from Africa, who are different places around the world, who don't feel the way that you do, who don't feel the need to not talk about race, who live in the fact that they are of a people who are at war against white supremacy. There are a lot of people who would love to play Fred Hampton that live inside of that reality. So it's concerning that you feel this way, obviously, but it's also concerning that you would feel the need to dip and dabble whenever it's appropriate for your career. So I just want to see what you guys think about this. What are your thoughts on Daniel Kaluuya? What are your thoughts on the fact that he is basically saying, you know, I don't want to be the black actor, even though his most famous roles at this point are ones that are racially charged, ones that talk about racism, and some of them brilliantly. So that's all I have to say about this. I will see you guys in the next video.